Imagine the scene: a warm family dinner, the kind where laughter should echo off the walls. But not this time. I'd come home after my world crumbled, divorce papers still fresh, job gone in a flash, seeking solace in my childhood home. For weeks, I'd crashed in the guest room, pouring my heart into helping out just like always. I'd paid their mortgage when times were tough, fixed the leaking roof, even covered my niece's school fees without a second thought. Then over mashed potatoes and tense silence, Dad drops the bomb. Your sister and her husband are moving in. If you want to stay in that guest room, it's $5,000 a month, or pack your bags. My fork clatters to the plate. Mom avoids my eyes, sister smirks. Me, the one who'd sacrificed everything for them, treated like a freeloading stranger. Humiliation burned through me, betrayal twisting like a knife. But I didn't scream. I nodded, smiled even. That night while they slept, I logged into our shared accounts, the ones I'd funded for years. With a few clicks, I froze everything: savings, cards, insurance. Packed my bag, slipped out the door, leaving a note. I'm not paying rent in my own family. A week of eerie quiet. Then my phone explodes, 110 missed calls, voicemails from Mom. Her voice cracking in pure panic. What have you done? We can't access anything. Little did they know this was just the spark. What follows is a whirlwind of shocking discoveries, calculated revenge, and a family empire crumbling under its own greed. Stick around. You won't believe the twists, the tears, the ultimate triumph that left them begging. This isn't just payback. It's justice served cold. You have to see how it ends. My name is Emily Harper. I'm 57 years old, a former marketing director who spent 35 years climbing corporate ladders only to be restructured out of a job 6 months ago, right after my 28-year marriage ended in a quiet courthouse ceremony. The house I'd shared with my ex felt too large and too empty, so I did what so many women my age do when the ground disappears beneath them. I went home. Not to visit, but to heal. Mom and Dad welcomed me with open arms, the same arms that had rocked me through childhood fevers and teenage heartbreak. The guest room at the end of the upstairs hallway still had the faded floral wallpaper I'd picked out when I was 16. It smelled faintly of lavender sachets and safety. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. That was 3 weeks ago. Tonight, the dining room table is set with Mom's good china, the one she saves for birthdays and Thanksgiving. The roast chicken is golden, the mashed potatoes are creamy, and the green beans glisten with butter. Dad pours iced tea all around, and for a moment, everything feels like it used to, the four of us. Mom, Dad, my older sister Lauren, and me, laughing about nothing in particular. Lauren drove in from across town with her husband Mark and their daughter Sophie, who's 14 going on 30, and glued to her phone. Mark, as usual, dominates the conversation with stories about his latest real estate deals. I smile and nod in all the right places, grateful simply to be surrounded by family. Then Dad clears his throat the way he used to when he was about to announce a new household rule. The room quiets. Emily. He begins setting his fork down with deliberate care. Lauren and Mark are having some difficulties with their rental. The landlord raised the rent again, and it's just not workable anymore. They're moving back in with us next week. I feel a flicker of surprise, but it's not unwelcome. There's plenty of room after all. The old house has 4 bedrooms, and Sophie can take the attic suite she always loved as a little girl. That's fine, Dad, I say warmly. I'll help however I can. Dad exchanges a quick glance with Mom, then with Lauren. Lauren suddenly finds her napkin fascinating. Mark smirks into his tea. That's good of you, honey, Mom says too brightly, but there's something else we need to discuss. Dad folds his hands like he's at a board meeting. The guest room you're using, it's the only one on the main floor with its own bathroom. Mark needs that for his back issues. So, you'll have to move upstairs to the small room next to the laundry. I blink. The small room is barely larger than a closet and smells perpetually of detergent. Okay, I answer slowly. I can do that. There's one more thing. Dad's voice hardens. We've talked it over, and if you want to keep staying here after Lauren's family moves in, we'll need you to contribute fairly, $5,000 a month. That's what it would cost to rent a comparable room anywhere else in town. The words land like a slap. $5,000 a month. For the privilege of sleeping in my childhood home while I try to put the pieces of my life back together. The room spins a little. I look at Mom, waiting for her to protest, to laugh it off as one of Dad's bad jokes. She stares at her plate. Lauren still won't meet my eyes. Mark leans back in his chair, arms crossed, the faintest smile playing at the corners of his mouth. $5,000. That's more than my severance check lasted. More than I have in ready cash while I wait for freelance contracts to come through. Memories flood in without permission. The year the roof collapsed under heavy snow, and I wrote the $20,000 check without hesitation. The months I quietly paid the mortgage when Dad's construction business slowed, the private school tuition for Sophie when Lauren claimed they were a little short. Every time they needed something, I was there. No questions, no scorekeeping, because that's what family does. And now I'm being charged rent like a stranger off the street. My pulse thuds in my ears. The chicken tastes like ash. I set my fork down carefully, the way Dad just did, buying time while the shock settles into something colder, something sharp. Emily, Mom's voice is small. Say something. I look around the table at the parents who raised me to believe blood is thicker than anything, at the sister who used to braid my hair and now can't look me in the eye, at the brother-in-law who's always taken more than he's given. The weight of every sacrifice I've made for them presses down on my chest until I can barely breathe. I force a tight smile. Okay, I say quietly. I understand. Dad nods, satisfied. Conversation turns back to moving logistics. Who will take which dresser? How many boxes Lauren still has to pack? I nod in all the right places, again, my face a polite mask. But inside, something shifts. A decision crystallizes, cold and clear and unstoppable. I stayed silent, nodding. But inside, I'd made a decision no one could predict. The last of them had shuffled upstairs hours ago. I heard Dad's heavy tread on the landing, the click of Lauren's bedroom door, the low murmur of Mark's television through the wall. The house settled into that familiar nighttime hush, the one that used to feel safe. Tonight, it felt like the quiet before a storm I was about to call down myself. I stayed at the dining table, the same chair where Dad had delivered his sentence. The plates were cleared, but the smell of roast chicken still hung in the air, sour now, like something spoiled. My laptop sat closed in front of me. I opened it, the screen's cold light washing over my face. My fingers didn't tremble. They knew exactly what to do. I started with the joint savings account, the one Dad had insisted we all stay connected to for family emergencies. Balance $43,812. Most of it mine moved in quietly over the years. Whenever they were in a bind, I clicked account services, then security options, then freeze account. A yellow warning box asked if I was certain. I was more certain than I'd ever been about anything. I typed the reason: suspected unauthorized activity. Confirmed. Locked. Next, the household checking that paid the mortgage, the water bill, the credit cards they all used. Same process. Freeze. The credit card I'd added them to as authorized users after Lauren's car died. Freeze. The home insurance escrow I'd set up so they'd never have to worry about premiums again. Freeze. Every digital lifeline I'd ever extended, I severed in under 12 minutes. When I finished, the screen showed nothing but green padlocks. I closed the laptop and let the darkness swallow the room again. Upstairs, I moved like a ghost. I'd already decided what to take and what to leave. 2 medium suitcases, 1 carry-on, my passport, the small fire-safe box with birth certificate and divorce decree. I left the winter coats in the closet, the books on the shelf, the framed photo of Lauren and me at graduation. Those things belonged to the Emily who still believed family was forever. I zipped the bags, set them by the bedroom door, and changed into dark jeans, a black sweater, comfortable boots. I looked around one last time. The moonlight through the curtains painted pale stripes across the bed I'd slept in for 3 weeks. I turned off the lamp and left it glowing empty. Downstairs, I tore a sheet from Dad's yellow legal pad, the same one he used for grocery lists, and reminder notes. I wrote in block letters so there could be no mistake: I'm not renting in my own home. Emily. I placed the note dead center on the dining table, right where Dad's plate had been. Then I picked up my keys, slipped out the front door, and pulled it shut behind me with the softest click I could manage. The October air hit my face like cold water. I didn't look back. I drove with the windows down, letting the night bite my skin to prove I was still alive and moving forward. 20 minutes later, I checked into an extended stay hotel off the interstate, the kind of place that asks no questions when you pay cash for a week. I gave them the name Susan Carter, something I saw on a passing billboard, and carried my own bags to room 212. The room smelled of bleach and old carpet, but the deadbolt worked and the curtains closed tight. I set my phone to Do Not Disturb, plugged it in, and slept without dreams for the first time in months. The first few days tasted like freedom. I woke when I wanted, ate scrambled eggs at the diner across the parking lot, walk circles around the asphalt until my legs ached. I rewrote my resume, answered emails from recruiters, and watched normal families bicker over pancakes like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. No one asked me for money. No one reminded me how much space I was taking up. The silence from home was absolute. I told myself they were too angry or too ashamed to reach out. I almost started to believe I'd disappeared cleanly. On the 7th night, I was folding laundry on the hotel bed when the phone began its assault. It vibrated so hard, it danced off the nightstand and onto the carpet. I picked it up and watched the numbers climb like a horror movie counter. Missed call mom, missed call dad, missed call Lauren, voicemail, missed call mom again. The screen blurred as the notifications stacked too fast to read. By the time I unlocked it, the tally stood at 110 missed calls, 39 voicemails, and a text thread that looked like a cry for help. "Emily, please. This isn't funny anymore. The bank won't let us touch anything. Mark's card was declined at the grocery store. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Come home. We can fix this. Emily, I'm begging you." I pressed play on the most recent voicemail. Mom's voice filled the small room, thin and cracked nothing like the calm mother who used to hum while ironing my school uniforms. "Emily, honey, whatever you did to the accounts, please undo it. We're your family. We didn't mean it like that at dinner. Just come home, baby. Please." I don't know what to do. I'd never heard my mother's voice so panicked. And I knew something major had gone wrong. The voicemail ended, and the room went still, the kind of stillness that rings in your ears. I stood there holding the phone, Mom's broken plea looping in my head. And for the first time since I'd walked out, I felt something sharper than anger, curiosity maybe, or the first tug of fear that I'd only seen the surface of what they were capable of. I called the one person who still owed me favors from the life I'd left behind. Sarah Delgado and I had started as tellers together 40 years ago, back when we wore polyester skirts and counted cash by hand. She'd climbed the ladder at First National while I climbed the corporate one. I still had her cell number memorized. She answered on the second ring. "Emily Harper. I was wondering when you'd surface. Your name's been lighting up our fraud alerts like the 4th of July. My stomach dropped. Tell me." Someone marched into the main branch yesterday with a stack of documents, power of attorney, new signature card. The works all claiming to be you. Tried to unfreeze the accounts and pull $25,000 in cashier's checks. The teller got suspicious because the ID photo looked off. She stalled, called it up the chain, and everything hit the frozen account wall you put in place. Good thing you locked it down, Em. 5 more minutes and they'd have walked out rich. Who was it, I asked, though part of me already knew. Big guy, mid-50s, expensive watch, cheap attitude. Gave his name as Mark Reynolds. Ring any bells, Mark? Of course. There's more, Sarah said, lowering her voice. We pulled the lobby camera. Your parents were with him. Your dad stood right behind him filling out the deposit slip, while your mom kept watch at the door like a lookout in a bad movie. I'm emailing you the stills right now. I'm sorry, honey. The email arrived before I'd even hung up. I opened the attachment on my laptop, and there they were, 3 grainy color frames time-stamped yesterday afternoon. Mark, leaning over this counter, smirking at the teller. Dad pointing at something on the form, his mouth moving. Mom glancing nervously over her shoulder, clutching her purse like it might run away. My family caught red-handed trying to steal what was left of my name and my money. I sat back so hard, the hotel chair creaked. The betrayal at dinner had been cruel, but this was surgical. They hadn't just wanted me gone. They'd planned to strip me bare first. Sarah texted again. You want me to flag it for the police identity theft? Is a felony. Not yet, I typed back. I needed to understand how deep this went. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the small room until the carpet wore thin, then dragged out the plastic storage bin. I'd brought from home the one thing I hadn't been able to leave behind. Inside were old tax folders, birthday cards, and a shoebox labeled miscellaneous receipts in my mother's careful handwriting. I'd grabbed it on impulse the night I left, thinking I might need proof of all the times I'd bailed them out. I started digging. An hour later, I found the first clue, a withdrawal slip from 3 years ago for $5,000, initialed by Mark, taken from the joint savings the day after he'd supposedly repaid a loan I'd given Lauren for Sophie's braces. Another slip 6 months later, $8,000 noted as home repairs. Then smaller ones, $2,000 here, $1,500, They're always rounded to neat numbers, always on days when Mark had access to the online portal, because I'd once stupidly let him log in from my laptop to transfer $20 for pizza. By dawn, I'd lined up 23 separate withdrawals over 3 years totaling almost $90,000. $90,000 gone. And every statement showed the balance magically restored within days, my automatic transfers kicking in whenever the account dipped below a threshold I'd set up to help the family. I sat on the hotel floor, surrounded by paper ghosts of my own generosity, and felt something inside me harden into steel. Mark had a fraud lawsuit on record from 2018. I found the public docket with a simple Google search. A former business partner had sued him for cooking books on a real estate flip. The case settled out of court, but the allegations were ugly forged signatures, fake invoices, missing escrow funds. My parents knew. They'd sat at the same table while Lauren cried about how unfair it all was, and they'd still welcomed him into their home, into their accounts, into my life. They hadn't simply turned on me at that dinner table. They'd been bleeding me slowly for years, waiting for the perfect moment to finish the job. I stared at the frozen bank balances on my screen, at the camera stills of my own parents acting as accomplices, at the pile of receipts that proved I'd been nothing more than a walking ATM with a daughter's face. They didn't just want me out. They planned to drain me dry before I could shut the door. The truth sat in front of me, like a loaded gun, and I decided it was time to pull the trigger. I didn't scream into the void or hire a lawyer yet. Instead, I opened an email account I'd never used before, attached the clearest still frames Sarah had sent, plus a 30-second clip of Mark leaning over the teller's counter while my parents hovered like accomplices, and wrote a short, calm message. No threats, no hysterics, just facts in the video file. The recipient was Charlotte Kane. The woman behind Family Secrets uncovered a blog that had racked up millions of followers by posting raw, verifiable stories of betrayal inside the people we're supposed to trust most. I'd read her posts late at night when my own marriage was crumbling. Her comment sections were full of women my age nodding in recognition. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Charlotte replied in 14 minutes, "Are you safe? Can I post this tonight?" I typed back 2 words, "Yes, please." The story went live at 9 the next morning. By noon, it had 100,000 views. By dinner, it was on every platform that thrives on outrage. The headline was simple and brutal: parents and sister help son-in-law try to steal $25K from woman they charged rent after she lost everything. Charlotte blurred the faces just enough to keep the lawyers happy, but left the bank logo and the timestamp crystal clear. My first name was changed to E, but anyone who knew us knew. The internet did what it does best. It dug. Someone found Mark's old fraud lawsuit and posted the docket. Someone else located his real estate firm's Facebook page and filled it with screenshots. By the 3rd day, his employer issued a terse statement. Mr. Reynolds is no longer with the company. His LinkedIn vanished. His boss, a man who'd golfed with my father for 20 years, stopped answering Dad's calls. In our small town, the fallout was quieter, but no less devastating. Mom's garden club friends stopped inviting her to meetings. The church prayer chain that once asked for blessings on Dad's bad knee now whispered about greed and ingratitude. People crossed the street when my parents walked to the mailbox. Dad's old buddies from the VFW quit calling about Saturday breakfast. The silence was louder than any shouting. I watched it all from my hotel room phone on silent heart, strangely calm. I wasn't cheering. I was simply done protecting them from the consequences they'd spent years earning. Then 9 days after the story broke, came the knock. I knew who it was before I reached the peephole. 3 figures on the concrete walkway, Dad in his old Navy windbreaker, Mom clutching her purse like a shield, Lauren red-eyed and furious. I opened the door on the chain first. "Emily, let us in." Dad barked, voice hoarse. "This has gone far enough." I closed the door, slid the chain off, and stepped back. They filed in like defendants entering a courtroom. Lauren started first, tears already streaming. "How could you do this to us? My husband lost his job because of your little stunt. Sophie's friends are bullying her at school." Mom reached for me, eyes pleading. "Take the post down, honey. We'll say it was a misunderstanding. People will forgive." Dad stood rigid, jaw clenched. "You've humiliated us in front of the entire town. All because we asked you to contribute a little rent. You always were selfish with money." Selfish, the word almost made me laugh. I said nothing. I walked to the small table, opened my laptop, and turned it to face them. The video was already queued, 30 seconds of high-definition proof. I pressed play. Mark's smug face filled the screen, Dad's finger pointing at the forged form, Mom glancing nervously over her shoulder. The sound was perfect, right down to Mark telling the teller, "My sister-in-law's out of town. She asked me to handle this." Color drained from Dad's face. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Lauren stared like she'd never seen her own husband before. I let it loop once, twice, 3 times. The only sound in the room was the tinny echo of their own voices lying. When I finally closed the lid, Dad's eyes were wet. "We didn't have a choice," he rasped. "Mark said it was just temporary. You've always had more than enough, more than enough." My voice came out steady, almost gentle. "I paid for the roof over your heads. I paid Sophie's tuition. And the second I needed a corner to breathe, you put a price tag on it." Lauren sobbed harder. Mom reached for Dad's arm as if she might collapse. Dad's shoulders began to shake, great silent tremors, that turned into something I'd never witnessed in 57 years. I'd never seen my father cry. Until that day. The tears didn't last long. Dad wiped his face with the sleeve of his windbreaker, squared his shoulders, the way he used to when he thought toughness could fix anything, and muttered something about talking when I'd calmed down. Then the 3 of them filed out, Lauren still sobbing, Mom clutching Dad's arm like she might fall. The door shut behind them with the same soft finality I'd used when I left their house weeks earlier. I stood in the middle of the hotel room listening to their car start and pull away, and I felt nothing, not triumph, not pity, just a hollow quiet that rang louder than any shouting. 2 days later, there was another knock lighter, almost hesitant. I looked through the peephole and saw only Mom alone, clutching a large manila envelope against her chest like a life vest. She had aged 10 years in 14 days. The permanent wave in her hair had gone flat, and her lipstick was the wrong shade for her skin. I opened the door. "Can I come in, honey?" Her voice cracked on the last word. I stepped aside without speaking. She walked past me, set the envelope on the small table, and stood there twisting the strap of her purse. For a long minute, neither of us moved. "I couldn't sleep," she finally whispered. "Your father hasn't either. He just sits in the recliner staring at the television, even when it's turned off." She swallowed hard. "I told him I had to come alone. Lauren doesn't know I'm here." I waited. She pushed the envelope toward me. "This is everything you need to hate us completely. I figured you deserved the whole truth instead of just pieces." My fingers felt thick as I opened the metal clasp. Inside was a certified copy of a quitclaim deed dated 5 years ago, signed by both my parents transferring the family house on Maple Lane to Lauren Elizabeth Reynolds for love and affection. The notary stamp was crisp, the signatures unmistakable. I stared at the legal description of the only home I'd ever known and felt the floor tilt under me. 5 years, I said barely above a whisper. Mom nodded, eyes fixed on the carpet. Lauren kept threatening to move to Florida with Sophie if we didn't help more. Mark said they'd be happier farther away from you and your success. They said you didn't need us the way they did. So we signed it over. Thought it would keep the family together. Keep the family together. The phrase landed like a punch. "There's something else in there," she said, voice trembling. I reached deeper and pulled out a single sheet of heavy cream stationery, the kind Grandma always used for birthdays. The handwriting was hers, spidery but firm, dated 8 months before she passed. "To our dear Emily, when we're gone, the savings bonds in the safe deposit box, key tape behind the portrait in the attic, are meant for you alone. You've always been the steady one, the one who never asked for much. Use it to build the life you deserve. We love you fiercely." Grandpa and Grandma, attached to the letter, was a photocopy of a trust amendment signed by both grandparents, witnessed and notarized, naming me sole beneficiary of a brokerage account worth, at the time of their deaths, just over $240,000. My throat closed. Mom spoke so quietly I had to strain to hear. When the lawyer read the will, "Your father and I panicked. Lauren cried for days, said it wasn't fair that she had a child to raise, and you were fine on your own. We told the executor there must have been a mistake. We forged a codicil. The money went into the house account to pay off the second mortgage Mark insisted on. We thought you'd never need to know." I looked at the woman who'd braided my hair and packed my school lunches and taught me how to pray, and I didn't recognize her. The room felt suddenly too small, the air too thick. "You stole my inheritance," I said. The words came out flat, almost curious. Mom's eyes filled. "We chose Lauren. Over and over, we chose her, because she screamed and you never did. The silence stretched until it hurt. Finally, I folded the papers, slid them back into the envelope, and set it on the table between us like evidence in a trial. "I'm going to call an attorney tomorrow," I said. My voice sounded like someone else's, calm and cold. "The house, the trust, all of it. I'll take back what's mine." Mom nodded as if she'd expected nothing less. She smoothed her skirt with shaking hands and walked to the door. Her hand on the knob, she paused. "I don't expect forgiveness, Emily. I just needed you to hear it from me instead of reading it in some court filing." She left without waiting for an answer. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at the envelope until the streetlights came on outside. All my life, I'd believed that house on Maple Lane was waiting for me. The way it waited for Lauren, that the love was uneven but still mine if I just tried harder. The deed and the letter proved what I'd felt since that dinner table. I'd been a guest in my own story. I'd thought I'd lost my home, but I'd never truly had one. The words still echoed as I closed the hotel door behind Mom's retreating figure. I'd never truly had one. A home. A place where I belonged without conditions. The realization didn't break me. It unlatched something instead. For the first time in 57 years, I stopped trying to earn what was never going to be freely given. 3 months later, I was gone. I chose Willow Creek because the name sounded gentle and the rental listings were cheap. A 2-bedroom apartment above an old bookstore on the town square with slanted floors and a clawfoot tub and windows that looked out on maple trees turning gold. The landlord, a retired school teacher named Ruth, handed me the keys and said, "Take your time healing, dear. We've all needed it at some point." I paid a year in advance with the first wire from the reclaimed trust money that was finally, legally, undeniably mine. I work from the little desk by the window, now consulting for companies that never knew the old Emily who apologized for breathing too loud. My days have rhythm, strong coffee at 7 client calls until noon, long walks along the river path, where the only voices are geese and the wind. I joined a Thursday night watercolor class at the community center and discovered I'm terrible at painting, but excellent at laughing at myself. The women there, widows, divorcees, late-blooming artists, invite me to potlucks and never ask why I flinch when someone mentions family. Every evening I sit on the couch with a legal pad and pour the whole story onto the pages. Not for revenge, those fires have cooled, but for excavation. I write about the mortgage payments I made without being asked, the tuition checks, the way I confused being needed with being loved. I write about the quiet pride I felt, being the good child, the reliable one, the one who never made waves. Page after page, the pattern emerges like a bruise I can finally see clearly. I was never the priority. I was the parachute. When things got rough, they pulled my cord and expected me to be grateful for the fall. One Saturday in early spring, I met Diane for coffee after yoga. She's 71, twice divorced, owns the yarn shop downstairs, and swears like a sailor when the mood strikes. We'd been talking about boundaries, or my complete lack of them, when I let slip the old refrain I used to tell myself. They loved me in their own way. Diane set her cup down hard enough to rattle the saucer. "Honey, listen to me. They didn't love you. They loved your convenience. The day you stopped being convenient, the love evaporated. That's not love. That's leasing with an option to discard." The sentence hit me between the eyes. I wrote it at the top of the next blank page in my journal and underlined it 3 times. Convenience, not daughter, not sister, convenience. Something shifted after that. I enrolled in an online course for creative writing, something I'd wanted since college but never had time for because someone always needed bailing out. I hired a financial advisor who didn't know my family's history and watched her nod approvingly as I moved the rest of the trust into investments that will carry me comfortably into old age. I bought the domain name for a small blog. I've been quietly drafting stories from women who were raised to be useful instead of cherished. The first post is almost ready. For the first time, money feels like oxygen instead of obligation. I spend it on voice lessons because I've always wanted to sing without caring who hears. I bought a secondhand kayak and learned to paddle alone at dawn. I purchased the most ridiculous pair of red leather boots just because they made me smile in the mirror. Every choice is mine, unapologetically mine. Some nights I sit on the tiny balcony with a glass of wine and watch the town square lights come on. Ruth waves from the bookstore window. Diane texts a terrible joke. The river keeps moving steady and sure. I breathe in the smell of lilacs and fresh pages and feel my spine straighten a little more each day. I'd never felt so free until my sister's letter arrived. The envelope lay on the little table by the door for 3 days before I opened it. No return address, just my name in Lauren's careful schoolgirl cursive, the same handwriting that used to label our shared lunch bags. I finally slid it open on a rainy Thursday, standing in my kitchen with coffee going cold in my hand. Inside were 4 pages folded tightly, a thinner envelope, and a single photograph of us, at 12 and 15 arms slung around each other, at the county fair, sunburned and grinning, like nothing could ever come between us. Emily, I've started this letter 100 times and thrown everyone away. There's no good way to say what I have to say, so I'll just say it. I knew what Mark was planning. Not the exact day, but the idea. 6 months ago, he sat me down after Sophie was asleep and said the bank attempt was the cleanest way out. He had a buyer lined up in Costa Rica, a new name, a one-way ticket. He told me the money in the joint accounts, your money would be enough for all of us to disappear and start over. I cried. I screamed. Then I did nothing. Because disappearing sounded better than facing the mess he'd made. Mom and Dad knew too. They didn't want another scandal, didn't want the church ladies whispering that their golden girl had married a criminal. So we all agreed to keep quiet and let you take the blame if it ever came out. That's why the rent demand at dinner wasn't random. It was supposed to push you away before you noticed the accounts draining. I'm ashamed to write this, but I need you to know the whole ugly truth. I've been jealous of you my entire life. You were the smart one, the pretty one, the one Grandma bragged about at Bridge Club. I was the loud one who needed rescuing. Every time you succeeded, I felt smaller. Every time I failed, Mom and Dad moved heaven and earth to fix it, and I let them. I hated you for being lovable without trying, and hated myself more for needing them to choose me. I'm sorry, Emily. I'm sorry for every tuition check. I let you write every holiday. I let you pay for every time I watched them choose me and said nothing. I'm sorry for standing by while my husband tried to rob you blind. Mark is gone. Packed 2 bags the night the video went viral and hasn't come back. The house is 3 months behind, and the bank starts foreclosure next week. Mom cries all day. Dad barely speaks. Sophie won't come out of her room. Inside the small envelope is the signed affidavit Mark foolishly put his name to last year, promising to repay every dollar he took from the accounts. It's enough to reopen the fraud case and probably send him to prison if anyone ever files it. I'm giving it to you because it's the only thing of value I have left to offer. If there's any of Grandma's money left, any at all, please consider helping us keep the house. Not for me, not even for Mom and Dad, for Sophie. She's 14 and has lost her father and her home in the space of a month. I have no one else to cling to. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to hear it from me instead of a lawyer. Lauren. I read it twice then, a third time sitting on the floor with rain drumming the windows. The photograph trembled in my hand, 2 little girls who once believed sisters were forever. They were crumbling, and they still needed me to salvage their ruins. I let the pages of Lauren's letter fall from my fingers and stay where they landed, scattered across the hardwood like dead leaves. For a long time, I simply stared at them, at the photograph of 2 little girls who no longer existed. The old reflex rose in my chest, the one that always whispered, "Fix it, help them be the bigger person." But this time I watched it come and go without acting. I was tired of being the rescue raft. I never filed the affidavit. I never called the prosecutor. I never answered the letter. The only thing I did was pick up my phone one quiet evening, open the thread with Mom that had sat silent for months, and type 6 words before I could overthink them. I forgive, but I won't return. I pressed send, turned the phone face down, and walked away. 3 weeks later, the blog went live. I called it The Convenient Daughter. A simple site with a cream background and black text, no ads, no paywall. I posted the entire story in 8 parts exactly as it happened. Names changed just enough to keep the lawyers quiet. I wrote it plainly, without venom, the way you'd tell a friend over coffee. Within days, the comments filled with women my age and older. I was the family ATM too. They always chose my brother. I paid for everything and still got blamed. The inbox overflowed with private messages from daughters who had never felt chosen, from sisters who had never felt seen. I answered everyone I could. Something healing happens when you realize you are not the only one who is loved only when useful. A year slipped by like water. Willow Creek became home in the truest sense. My red boots wore comfortable grooves into the river path. The writing course turned into a published collection of essays that actually earned out its advance. The investments grew quietly in the background, doing what money is supposed to do when it's finally working for you instead of against you. Diane and Ruth and the watercolor ladies became the family I chose, the kind who show up with soup when you're sick and champagne when you're not. One October morning, while I was kneading bread dough and humming off key, my phone buzzed on the counter. A single text from Mom, the first in 12 months. "Are you okay?" I looked at the screen for a long time. Through the window, the maple trees were turning the same gold they'd been the day I arrived. I thought about the foreclosure notice I'd seen by accident on the county website, the one that listed the house on Maple Lane as bank-owned. I thought about Sophie starting high school in a cramped apartment, about Dad's silence and Mom's sleepless nights, and Lauren learning what it feels like to stand on her own. I set the phone back down without replying. Some questions no longer require answers. The blog has 500,000 subscribers now. Every week, another woman writes to say she finally said no, finally walked away, finally chose herself. Their freedom tastes like mine, clean, bright, and entirely my own. I'd once been their talking wallet. Now, I was simply myself. And that's the entire story, from the night at the dinner table when my father looked me in the eye and said $5,000 a month for the guest room or pack your bags, to the quiet morning I finally chose myself. I never went back for revenge. I simply stepped out of the role they had assigned me for 57 years and refused to play it one day longer. The house on Maple Lane now belongs to a young couple whose toddlers race across the same lawn where Lauren and I once hunted Easter eggs. My parents rent a modest one-bedroom 20 miles away. Lauren is learning slowly and painfully what it feels like to stand on her own 2 feet. And every single morning, I wake up in my little apartment filled with light, surrounded by friends who love me, whether my bank account is overflowing or running on fumes. If you stayed with me until the very last word, thank you from the bottom of my heart. This was the most personal story I've ever told. If anything in Emily's journey felt like it was ripped from your own life, the silent sacrifices, the constant second place, finished the moment you finally whispered enough. Please leave a comment below. Just one line is enough. I was the family ATM too, or they always chose my sibling. Your words might be the lifeline another woman needs tonight to find the courage to walk away. Over 500,000 of us have built this community together, a place where no daughter ever has to apologize for putting herself first. If this story made your heart ache, made you angry, made you cry, or simply made you feel seen, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell right now. Every new subscriber is proof that these truths still matter, and every comment reminds someone watching in silence that they are not alone. Thank you for listening. You were never just someone's convenience. You deserve to be cherished exactly as you are. See you in the next one. I'm rooting for you.